Hello everyone and welcome to This Anime, the podcast that talks about anime past, present, and future, all with the exclamation of This Anime. And this is your This Anime for the month of January 2021. It feels good to be back on the mic after months of actually not being on the mic. It feels very, very weird. Being back here, but we're back, and we are doing some interesting takes this time on the show. We are continuing our exploration of Phi-Brain, and this is the second season and the first half of said second season. So that is episodes 1 through 13. And then we're also going to be covering Makoto Shinkai's latest feature, which I saw about a little over a year ago at this point, theatrically, back when I could still do that. Things hopefully will return to normal sometime over the summer. Here's hoping. But anyway, we're gonna first, before we get into what I think is the main crux of it, which is Phi-Brain, actually, not Makoto Shinkai's Weathering with You. I think we're gonna talk about Shinkai's Weathering with You first. So, without further ado, let's dive into my discussion about Weathering with You.
A special heavy rain advisory has just been issued in the Tokyo area.
Would you like the rain to stop?
What do you mean by...
It's gonna clear up.
She really was the Sunshine Girl.
What do you know about the boy in the video?
Stop!
What do I do? They're going to separate us.
Let's run away!
One must be careful. A tragic fate awaits the Weather Maiden.
Let's make a promise to each other to always be together.
There's nothing more gorgeous than a beautiful, clear sky.
Hold on tight!
I don't want to shoot you.
You helped me find a reason to live. I'm really glad I met you. So please, don't cry, Hotika.
Time to grow up, little man.
I need to see her again, even if it's just once. Hina, where are you?
Now, the main thing when I went into this movie going, okay, it's Makoto Shinkai. What is his big, what is his next project after the absolutely flooring situation with Your Name, which we covered last year on the show? I was going, okay, what's he gonna follow this up with? And the first trailer for Weathering with You came out, and I'm like, okay, it looks beautiful. I don't necessarily understand what the story is. And to me, the story's pitch in the trailers and whatnot kind of aren't really what the story is. What it more is about is the fact that it's about a young love story. It's a young love story that has this supernatural element to it, obviously, but what it brings to the table is a lot different than I came to expect from not only a Japanese filmmaker, but just an overall filmmaker in the anime medium. And looking at like interviews with Shinkai after the fact, after watching them film, and then also just looking at the bonus features on the Blu-ray that I have from Gkids, there's a lot that he put in and a lot of more global mindset that he put into this film that you don't necessarily see a lot in filmmaking. Like I've talked about how Mamoru Hosoda developed his films actually with kind of that international audience in mind. And I think Shinkai is also thinking about a global audience rather than just this secular idea of a Japanese audience. And in fact, he even says in some of the interviews that are attached to this film that he feels like it's not something a Japanese audience can fully back, like a traditional Japanese audience would fully back, with the idea of its ending. Like the decision that our main character makes is completely against what a Japanese mindset would think. It, like, put your country, this kind of nationalism, this idea of put others before yourself, in all aspects of life. And that isn't what this is. Like, this story at the end is he makes a decision for himself. Odaka, like, he makes a decision to put himself above literally the world, because you have this inclement weather of just like constant rain that is literally flooding Japan, and there's a moment later on where a character goes, like, originally Japan was underwater. Like the city itself of Tokyo was underwater, and it's essentially just nature reclaiming the city. And it's an interesting take. It's an interesting idea, and of course Shinkai is very much a proponent of, like, protecting the environment and whatnot. A lot of Japanese filmmakers are fond of taking that idea and rolling with it, and this is no different. And it's really just something completely touching. Like, I don't know I don't know why. Like, I honestly think when it comes to your name is more in your face with its telling and its story. I think Weathering with You is a much more subtle take on the same thing. Like, it is completely 100% a take on exactly the same ideal. And frankly, I kind of enjoy this more, oddly enough. Like, I don't think there's many people that can say that. And that's an out that makes me, of course, as I've been prone to do on this show, an outlier in the fact that some people are like, no, your name's better. I don't think so. I actually think this is a better film in some ways, and then in other ways it's not necessarily better. I will say Radwimps returns to cover the score and the music and the soundtrack itself for the film. And honestly, I like this. I don't like the score more, because I think Your Name has a fantastic score, but the insert songs for Weathering with You, I think, are actually superior in every stretch of the imagination. And that is kind of amazing. Like, I really, really dig the fact that it's different. It's a very different take on anime. It's a very different take on insert songs. I think out of all of this, all of the inserts, there's only really like one insert in the Weathering with You sound in the inserts that I kind of don't care for, and that's Voice of the Wind. Celebration is probably my favorite. And like Grand Escape is great. We'll Be All Right is very joyous and kind of upbeat. And Is There Still Anything That Love Can Do? Not only the English version, but the Japanese version as well. I could probably flip that, but you get my point. They're both very, very good. And in fact, Is There Still Anything That Love Can Do, I think, is implemented perfectly in the film. And it's absolutely 100% amazing in that aspect. As for the score itself, I think the score is actually lackluster and kind of doesn't stand out as much compared to where I think the score of Your Name just like completely 100% brings me back to the movie when I listen to it. Weathering with You's score, I don't think has the same effect. I think it's still good per se, but I'm not going back to it as often as I do with the Your Name score. And it's weird. It's this weird notion that like I love one aspect of the Your Name music and I love the other aspect of the Weathering with You music. It's this very interesting dichotomy that has kind of shaped how I think of everything. And it probably does shape my thoughts on the film overall. And I think that's fine. so like the overall story is you have Hodaka Morishima. He is a freshman who runs away from his home, and he heads to Tokyo, where he meets Hina, who is basically doing part-time jobs to support her family after her mother suddenly passes away. But she has a very unique ability because she can control the weather with prayer. And this is a result of her, when her mother passed, she went to this shrine and was like, please, I need help. And it's a very, it just shows how beautiful Shinkai can paint a picture. Whereas the characters are very classic anime drawn, like the actual character work is very traditional anime style. The detail that gets put into the environments and the lighting is absolutely spectacular. I think the sequence that Celebration is inserted in is probably the best use of just showing how beautiful Shinkai can make lighting in his work. Like the use of lighting and the use of the absolute spectacular background animation is superb. Like there is no other element that is not as polished as that in this film. And so Hodaka, he ends up getting hired by a man named Kaisuke Suga, who runs a basically tabloid paper, and he's basically just saying like, look, I was like you when I was younger. I ran away from home and I had to deal with all this. And hot on his heels is actually these two police officers. One's a more brash, younger officer, and the other is kind of an old cop. And there's a moment in this film later on when the older cop goes to meet Suga, and there's this unspoken connection between these two characters that I think is subtle enough that people aren't going to notice, but I noticed it in this. This is like the third time I've seen this film, because I saw it in theaters dubbed, and then I saw it again dubbed when I first bought the Blu-ray, and then I watched it again very recently for this episode, and I watched the sub. And I think it's a little more apparent in the sub, just based on the inflections and everything, that the character, there's a connection between this older officer and Suga, and my assumption is that originally Yasao, he was the one that found Suga when he was a kid and brought him back to his family at some point. And there's a bit of understanding between these two characters that is so genuine and interesting that I'm like, okay, that's a very such an interesting take on it. And I honestly think this is probably the undersung story behind this film. Like, it kind of shows that Shinkai, when he built this, when he was writing this, was very keen on the other like the minor characters, trying to piece together relationships and where they all connect in this world. And it's these little again, the same thing with his animation. It's the little details that are superbly implemented that make Shinkai's work in general stand out. But I think in his last two productions with Your Name and Weathering with You, I think he finally took his style in animation and applied it to his writing. Because as much as I would love to cover the rest of Shinkai's work, I think all of his earlier work pre Your Name is absolute garbage, as in terms of story. So there's not really a lot for me to talk about story-wise. I think visually he has always been superb, but his stories didn't become clear until Your Name and Weathering with You. And I think that's fine. And they even bring in the characters from Your Name. So we do see Mitsuha and Taki. I don't necessarily believe that these characters, this is pre the end sequence of Your Name. If I am 100% correct, I'm not 100% on that, but I believe it takes place. Like, no, this whole sequence couldn't have taken place post the beginning because of everything being underwater. So it has to be after the events of Your Name, like the very end of Your Name, our happy ending, as it were. And it's interesting. It kind of pieces. It's a little subtle nod, and it's only like you're not going to necessarily go, oh, unless you've seen Your Name. Like, you're not going to fully realize who these characters are. They're completely superfluous, and necessarily, I don't think the camera holds on them to a point where people go like, okay, this person's important. Why is this person important? I think I think Taki is more like, his appearance is more apparent. Like, I'm supposed to know who this person is. Mitsuha is very just completely 100% just a random character. I think Taki is much more, because Taki has a lot more to do in terms of just exposition in the story. I think that results in characters making a lot more sense. But it's such an interesting love story, because it, like, you're not necessarily, you're slowly seeing this love story build, and it's not as obvious as Your Name was, like, that these people are falling in love. It's even more subtle than Your Name. Like, Your Name, you're not necessarily going to that love angle. But with Weathering with You, I see this subtle progression that is a lot more, again, subtle. Like, there are moments where you just like, okay, I can see the progression of this love story as super fucking believable. And there's even more talk in this film, like actual social commentary in this film in terms of Japan and its views on certain things that are subtle. Like, they're very subtle and work with the story, but you're not necessarily going, oh, I get what's going on, I understand everything. You're going like, oh, this makes a lot more sense, I guess. And it's talking about like actual firearms, because there's this whole literally Schrodinger's gun that shows up in the first act. We get rid of the gun, and the gun shows up in the third act, which is absolutely, it's cheap. It's a cheap ploy, but I think the movie sidesteps it a little bit. But if you're an avid movie watcher, if you're an avid screenwriter, you're going to obviously pick that up from the get-go. And it's funny. It's a funny notion that happens. And overall, like, I actually think Hodaka's decision to say, no, fuck the world, I don't care about the rest of the world, I care about you, I care about being with you, and my love trumps everything else. And that notion, and this is after Hina's completely given up and disappeared from this world, and everything is back to quote unquote normal. He goes, screw it, I love you, I want to be with you forever, and I don't care if it dooms the world, I want to be with you. and I want you to be with me. And it's that emotional point where you're going, okay, I understand the notions of is there still anything that love can do to bring you back, is actually what that what the song is questioning, is like, can my love bring me not only to you but bring you back from where you are. And I think that to me is much more of an emotional kick, and it still makes me cry. Like when the chorus hits for the first time in the movie, Hodoka, he's running to the shrine, which is essentially the gateway to get Hina back. And he's just like, no, I have to do this. And then there's this confrontation with Suga, and he's just like, don't you see, Suga's like, I'm trying to help you, and the dog is like, no, fuck that, I'm doing this for me, I'm not doing this for anyone else. And that stops him from continuing on, because he's just like, okay, screw it, I'm going to help you do what you want to do. And I think that's such an amazing moment for both characters. Like, I think it's a very amazing moment for both characters in this movie. And it's a spectacular piece of animation, and it's a spectacular piece of character work. When it comes to the Japanese versus the English cast is fucking phenomenal. You've got Brandon Ingman and Ashley Boycher are playing our two leads. But honestly, the cast that Gkids brought together for the rest of the casting is absolutely phenomenal. I believe both Taki and Mitsuha's voice actors return, obviously. And then you've got Riz Ahmed playing the younger officer. Mike Pollock is playing the older officer that's on Hadoka's trail. Alison Brie is playing Natsumi, who is Katsuke Suga's niece, and is another kind of minor character in this, where she's just kind of like, she does a good job. She's integral to the plot, because again, this cast is friggin' tiny. There's a majority of the cast is main cast is like, there are a handful of characters. As for Suga himself, he's played by Lee Pace. and he is very good. He's very good. I think Lee Pace understood the material and what he was doing. And I think that showed in his performance pretty spot on. And like overall, this is absolutely 100% one of Shinkai's like masterpieces. While I will say I put this and Your Name pretty much on the same pedestal, I kind of like this just a tad more, after seeing it a couple of times. And more importantly, like I again completely did not know this was happening, and chose this episode's selection way beforehand. But as of earlier this month, this film is available on HBO Max. And that is absolutely awesome. It's really cool that more people are going to start discovering it, especially considering that HBO Max is bringing in more subscribers, especially given Warner's decisions to release theatrical and HBO Max at the same time. I think many film analysts are saying this is a bad move. I think it's the future, but that's just my opinion. And I'm just some Joe Schmo that is talking into a microphone in his fucking parents' house. So I don't know. But yeah, overall, my thoughts on Weathering with You are super, super positive. I really, really love this. And so we're going to take a quick break, ladies and gentlemen. And when we come back, we're going to dive into Phi-Brain, Season 2, Episodes 1 through 13. We'll be right back for more of this anime. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to this anime. I hope you enjoyed the work score from Phi-Brain, the Orpheus Order, which is what we are talking about today. And that is Season 2. And frankly, I really enjoyed this. I as much as I fell in love with Phi-Brain in season 1. I think season 2 is way more rich. It still has the same fucking problems because, god damn it, I don't understand the fucking motivations of its villains. It makes very little fucking sense. And it continues to make very little fucking sense because I can't fathom what the fuck is going on with the villains. And this is the Orpheus Order, is our villains, who are a group basically bent on trying to fuck with Kaito, and get revenge on him for something that Kaito doesn't even fucking remember, and they refuse to fucking tell him what's wrong. How did I spite you? And it's like, oh my gosh, just friggin' tell him. Cause like he clearly doesn't remember, like not even in the slightest. And it's frustrating because it's just like, no, fuck you. Tell him why you're spiting him. Like, just tell him. God damn it. Because this is so absolutely frustrating. But what keeps me watching this show isn't that. What keeps me watching this show is the fact that its characters are so fucking lovable. Like, I love these characters so much. I mean, you've got the likes of likes of Anna. You've got who I fell in love with Anna during season 1, but I think what's even more funny, that I've kind of fallen even more in love with Gamon. Gamon, is such a dick rival character, and now that he in the first season he was kind of more like a Kaiba to Kaito. In the second season, he becomes more like Vegeta. Like, and I think as a Vegeta type of character in a shonen series about just solving fucking regular ass puzzles, it's absolutely A+ material. Especially given the fact that Gamon is not only a quote unquote solver, but he's also someone who can create puzzles himself. He's not only a solver, but he's also a giver, and that plays into this story even more than it did in the first season, because I think it just plays more into what season 2 is bigger and better than it was before, and I think that is absolutely the key to this entire show. Is just like, it's bigger and better than it was in season 1, but it still has all the really dumb issues of season 1, which kind of makes me go like, okay, this is just how this universe works. We have villains that do not fucking have any motivation whatsoever. You have character motivations that don't reveal themselves until like maybe halfway through the fucking season. It's writing wise, like I can see why people won't necessarily stick with this show compared to other anime. Like it's very hard to stick with this show. As for some of the other characters, I think the decision in season 2 to take some of the more incidental characters, more specifically, the decision to bring Elena more into the forefront of the story, I think is absolutely awesome. And I think her relationship with Gamon is actually really genuinely cute. And it's so good. Like I really do love this. I love her as a character because she's just as just as headstrong as the rest of the cast, and with the notion that okay, we're bringing this character more to the forefront than we have than we did in season 1. And I love that. I love that idea of okay, that's what we're gonna do. And we have and like when it comes to some of the other main characters, you have Nonoha, who I think gets a lot more in the final like mini arc that gets placed in between the major plot of this show, of this season. Like the major plot of this season is okay, you have the Orpheus Order, they want to get revenge on Kaito because he spited them in some odd way that they refuse to fucking tell him. And then you have Cubic, who is again, Cubic's Cubic. He gets basically he does get kind of a rival in this season. Like every single member of the Orpheus Order, as it were, has their corresponding rival. I don't think it's as obvious. I don't think it's as apparent with Anna, compared to everyone else. Because it's like Anna's connection to her Orpheus Order opponent, Orpheus Order owner equivalent, is not as clear, as it were. Like I don't think it's super clear who this character needs to be. As for, I think it's a little more apparent that they really do have this antagonistic relationship is Melancholy and Cubic. Like that is much more of a rivalry, but given that Anna is essentially a very aloof character, And I've it fits, and like genuinely Anna is probably one of my favorite characters in the entire show, and I'm so glad I'm super glad I got introduced to Anna as just a general note, because Anna is such an interesting character, and I absolutely adore every time they're on screen. As for our villains, all right. So we have this Orpheus Order, and the whole crux of them is to bring about taking all the creating these artificial Orpheus rings and distributing them amongst the entire population. However, there's a problem with the Orpheus rings. They make people go nuts. It corrupts the human mind. And I think that is absolutely 100% true when it comes to Free Cell, who is the leader of the Orpheus, who is essentially the benefacto leader of the Orpheus Order. And I honestly think it's very interesting. And essentially they're just fighting to stop the spread of the Orpheus rings to others, and the Orpheus Order is essentially going like, all right, we're gonna get revenge on Kaito and progress our agenda at the same time by using replica rings and taking data and analyzing the data from those replica rings to perfect them, while also getting revenge on Kaito at the same time. So you have all these different characters in the early part of this season that we've been introduced to as like incidental characters throughout the first season, and they get possessed by these replica rings, and they kind of go a little nutty, some more than others. There is an episode that is kind of weird, where one of the possessed characters is still as goofy as they were before the ring, so it doesn't feel as much of a possession compared to in one case the vice president of the student council, who gets possessed in the first major two-parter of season 2 here. She goes up against Kaito in this shutter puzzle where in one of the school buildings, like, she presses a button, half the shutters, a chunk of the shutters shut or open. There's like 3 different buttons that she can press, and the shutters go up and down. And she's playing against Kaito, who is trying to get to the top, and she is trying to lock him in place, like actually completely block him off, and he can't move at all. By giving him by shutting him completely out with 2 shutters closed on him. And Kaito basically unlocks, just shows that you don't need the Orpheus ring to unlock your full potential. And every single time he ends at a point where he needs to figure it out, he unlocks that part of his brain that he uses his full potential of his brain, and he solves the puzzles. But he does it without the ring, because at the end of season 1, he ends up breaking the ring. So just proving that you don't need to use the rings to gain your full potential. And we know that because Kaito is a perfect example of it. But these villains are like, no, we're going to use these rings because that's the only way we're going to unlock everyone's full potential. Which is very, very stupid. Like it's so stupid. It's very hilarious, the notion that, okay, these characters are going to do this, and I guess the Orpheus Order's using people to create these deadly puzzles, trying to kill Kaito, and no, Kaito's not going to have that, because of course his modus operandi is, I don't condone using puzzles to hurt people, and I'm all for putting your heart and soul into a puzzle where you actually feel it when you're doing the puzzle itself. And that of course is true. When you see puzzles, you do sometimes feel like, okay, the person that made this puzzle had some heart to it, had some thought and love and care that got put into making this. And then you have these people with their own agendas just kind of pushing it to be for their own selfish gain, instead of the love of just spreading the enjoyment of puzzles. And that is pretty much the crux of what this show is. It's about using puzzles as a metaphor for just art in general. And I think that, to me, is way more interesting than anything else that I could genuinely think about for this film, for this series, as it were. It's really good. And what I will say is, I did not. I of course am watching this subbed because, oh god, the dub is horrible. Dub's not good whatsoever. This dub's bad. This dub is really late 2000s era dub. Even though this is this is a 2011, 2012 series. It feels, it does not feel good. I don't know whether it was just kind of the idea that, this is kind of superfluous. I don't care about the dub as much. But the sub's fine. I do laugh every like you could take all of the times people have said Kaito's full name and put it into a video, and I guarantee you it would be almost the length of a fucking episode of this show. Like, if you take every single time someone has said Kaito's full name throughout the entirety of this show, you would get an absolutely mess of a fucking supercut. Like, you supercut it all, it's probably going to be about the length of an episode of the show. That is how many times people friggin' say this character's name. It is hilarious. Like, every time someone's talking about him, they use his full name. And that's only in the Japanese, obviously. Like, the English, I don't think uses it as often. But again, I'm not listening to the English because it is goddamn awful. It's not a fun dub to listen to. But yeah, this is one of those shows where it's just like, I'm fully invested. I'm entertained so much that it is hilarious. It's absolutely hilarious that this show has basically won me over. Especially in the last couple episodes of what we're covering here of this first 13. Let me think. These are the last 3 episodes here, where you have it's the last 4 episodes. Sorry, the last 4 episodes of this show, of this first half of the season, are kind of a mini arc, as it were, because Elena invites the rest of the crew to a little private island for a vacation, and the first episode is basically they're like, all right, Elena's like, I made a promise to Nonoha, I'm gonna force you guys not to deal with puzzles, and it kind of puts a strain on everyone because it's like puzzles are so much a part of their life that it just breaks them in a way. And it's very it's funny. It's a funny little bit where there's these characters that are just like so ingrained with puzzles that they can't not have them in their lives. And at the end of the episode, Elena basically just acquiesced, and it's just like, all right, you know what? There's no stopping you guys. I'm gonna turn this into like a puzzle boot camp, as it were. And then the episode 11 is where Nonoha goes, no, I feel absolutely useless to this crew. I don't understand why I'm part of this crew. I'm not solving puzzles. What's my purpose? And like Elena is clearly seeing like Nola has the glue that keeps the entire group together. Like, she's the glue that holds everyone together and gets them every now and again to stop focusing on the puzzles and just be friends and be kind of this little family of people. And talk and be together as one. And I think Nonoha starts to realize her place in the crew by the end of the episode, because she's like, I want to try to solve these puzzles, and she's like, okay, no, that's not who I am. That's not who I need to be. And that's not the role I play. But the role I play is still important. And I think for a second season, that's what you want. That's what you want out of a second season. You want to take your characters and expand on them, and let them grow. And I think that is probably this last little mini arc is essentially the idea of, okay, this is where all the characters are being developed and iterated upon as the story is slowly progressing. And then the next episode is part of a 2-part, like, also mini arc about Newton, our student council president, Soji. He gets contacted by a gentleman known as the Minotaur, who goes, I want you to be the last. I'm working for the Orpheus Order. I want you to do one last thing and challenge Kaito to a puzzle of fools. And as a result, we're going to get the last bit of information we need. And Soji is also going like, all right, this is actually going to benefit. I can actually fool the Orpheus Order to gain information for our side as well, because they're still trying to figure out the last little bit that needs to be done to break the hold that these fake Orpheus rings give on the users. And you have this. So you have this last puzzle of fools where you have, okay, we're going to send off this character in such an interesting way, because by the end of this episode, he leaves and graduates the academy. And it's this notion that, like, okay, this is a character we've been with for a season and a half now. He has been this kind of rock that this crew has all been together with, and now he's saying, I need to leave. I need to find my own path. And I like the notion that, like, this is an interesting send-off where he's going like, I'm going to do one last thing to help you on your quest, and then I'm going to go on my own journey for me. And that is it's a great melancholy way to end this first core of the second season, because you're just like, all right, we have finished what we want to do with the mini character arcs for some of these minor characters that we introduced in season 1, and now we're going to go full steam ahead with the main plot of season 2 here. And I think that is absolutely spectacular. And just this brilliant piece of character writing that you want from a second season. And that is essentially what the Phi-Brain season 2 is. It is saying, okay, we established all these characters. Let's progress them to a more interesting point. And who gives a fuck about the main villains of season 2? Like, we can just make it kind of superfluous, kind of throw away bad guys. We can say, the Orpheus rings, that'll do it. Why are they not just telling Kaito straight up what's wrong? Oh, because Free Cell's a fucking psychopath that thinks it's more fun to torture him with the notion that I'm not going to tell him. He has to realize it for himself because I'm crazy. It's like, all right, fine. I'm not really in this show for the villains. I'm not in it for the actual main plot. I'm in it for the characters. And I think that, to me, is essentially what makes Phi-Brain so interesting, is that its characters are great. Its plot is as dumb as bricks. Its motivation is even, for its villains, is even worse. But its characters are so well defined, so well written, that you can't help but continue to watch. And that's what this show is. This show has all been about, all right, let's dive headfirst into all of these interesting characters compared to what is frankly such a mess of a show. And that's all I really have to say about Phi-Brain season 2. This first half of it. And more specifically, I want to make a little announcement, because now that we're at the end of this, of course, we want to continue talking Phi-Brain season 2, but given the fact that I have a lot planned, and given the fact that if you've been listening to the show for a while now, I've kind of gotten away from the notion of the anime book club segment, where we have one segment which is the main topic, and then we have the anime book club. And I've kind of, that segment has kind of basically dissolved into just a general second half of the show. So what I decided to do is take the anime book club and say, all right, we're going to still do the anime book club in 2021, but what we're going to do is make it a quarterly show. So that's right. On the first weekend in April, we're going to continue talking Phi-Brain season 2. We're going to finish out season 2's run, and then the next anime book club, which will be out in June, or sorry, it'll be July, because let me think. It'll be the 4th month, so 3 more months after that is July, yeah. So in July, we'll just talk the entirety of season 3. And season 3 is also 25 episodes, so that is going to be 25 episodes across the entirety of 3 months to watch, which is fine. Like, that's fair. I've been wanting to do a second piece of content for this anime for the new year. And I think taking the anime book club and spinning it into its own piece of content for the feed and making it a quarterly show. So every 3 months, you're going to get a new episode. So the beginning of April, we'll have a new episode of the anime book club, as that'll probably be out the first weekend in April. Let me just double check. The first weekend in April. Yeah. So you're going to get our March episode on the last Sunday, which is when every single episode is going to come out. So every last Sunday of April, we are going to be doing that. Every last Sunday for the rest of the year, that's when the episodes will go live. Sunday mornings, 9 a.m. Eastern. They will go live on the feed. So if you want to just hold off on listening it till your Monday commute, that's perfectly fine. But they'll go out Sunday morning. And then on the following Sunday in April, so the first Sunday of the month, is when Anime Book Club will come out. So the first Sunday in April, the first Sunday in July, and the first Sunday in October is when those episodes will go out. So that is going to be it for this anime for the month of January. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And for next month, we've got a romantic theme, which for most of the first half of this year, I have got multiple kind of theme episodes planned. So for the month of February, we're going to have some romantic stories, and we're going to be talking about Devil's Line, the romantic action series about a woman that falls for a vampire. And it is way better than Twilight ever could be. And we are pairing that with the more grounded reality piece called Recovery of an MMO Junkie. And that is going to be out the very last day of February, the 28th. And I hope you guys tune back for that. So for those of you who are not keeping up, we've got Devil's Line and Recovery of an MMO Junkie, February 28th. And then I will not tell you what's coming out in March, but after the March episode comes out on the first Sunday of April, the 4th, we will have our episode of the Anime Book Club covering the final half of Phi-Brain Season 2. Thank you guys for listening. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at Ken Reels. Follow the podcast at This Anime Pod. ThisAnimePodcast.com is where you can find all of the information, including the show notes. And we're officially available on all your podcast platforms, including Pandora Music, which apparently has hit as is where a huge chunk of our new audience has lied. So I am super excited for people who have found us on Pandora. Thank you guys for listening, and I hope you guys enjoy the new content in 2021. Thank you for listening to This Anime.
Okay, master. Let's kill the whole.
No. If anything, just like us on Facebook. Go to facebook.com/thisanimepodcast. Follow the podcast on Twitter @thisanimepod, or comment on our episode posts over at thisanimepodcast.com. That's This Anime Podcast on Facebook, @thisanimepod on Twitter, and thisanimepodcast.com.
Yes. Oh my god.
This Anime is available on Stitcher, Spotify, iTunes, and Google Play/podcasts. If you're listening on one of those platforms, please consider subscribing, rating, and or reviewing on those platforms to help us grow. Every time you do so, it helps This Anime take over